feet. Touchdown, Ravens!
What a play by the Ravens. It's going to result in a touchdown.
Play action. Pass is caught. That's going to be a first down for the Ravens.
40, 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Ravens! And the crowd goes wild.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Play Action Podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 3, and here with Coach Codd. Well, I don't have to introduce you.
That's all right, yeah.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Play Action Podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 3. I'm your host, wide receivers coach, Lamont Johnson.
I'm head football coach Jonathan Coddington. Good to be back on the podcast after the season with you. It's great to, as we now get to sit back and kind of reflect on the year, celebrate the good things that happened, the plays that were made, just the impact that guys had, this year on the program. It's a good year to look back on. Also at the same time, excited to be able to continue to move forward, into this offseason.
Yeah, I know we all kind of excited to get to this point of the year. Even more excited to start the year, but it's always nice when we could kind of wrap things up and then kind of get back to work, roll the sleeves up, and do some of the dirty work.
Absolutely. And as always, it's always good to end the year off with keeping the Bronze Ball at home, winning that last game, the rivalry game. Definitely one that, it's just a cool deal in college football, as even, this weekend, a lot of the bigger programs are having their rivalry games. To be able to end the season with such a intense rivalry is an awesome thing. And obviously to be able to win the game and bring the trophy back, makes it that much more special.
Heck yeah. And even with our guys, everybody kind of finds a way to squeeze a little bit more out of themselves for the rivalry game, for the last game of the year. And like you said, we got to keep the ball here, and that's always fun.
Yeah, definitely being able to get everything out of, the guys. Without a doubt, I kind of shared with the team at the end of that game was, the effort was phenomenal through the course of that game. You could literally see guys leaving it all out there where, they were just completely exhausted at the end of the game because of how much they invested physically, obviously mentally and emotionally, just, from, any game of football, but in that one, the highs of that game, of the interceptions, the long touchdowns, to obviously some lows in that game as well too. It's tough to be able to stay on task and focused through 3 hours, 60 minutes of football, but the guys definitely did that, and boy, without a doubt, by the end of it, I think they were pretty well spent.
Yeah, but along with our players giving everything they got, making the plays being made, on top of dealing with just the hard part, long part of the season, our seniors, guys playing for the seniors, even leaving the seniors out with a good note with the win. It's kind of hard for some guys to kind of process and take that in, while being able to stay focused. But was glad to kind of be there and see our seniors kind of end the year on a good note.
Yeah, most definitely. And, this is a senior class that as we've, took over this program, we got here in the second semester of their freshman year, we added a couple guys to that, through transferring, that next year. But, these guys have really helped to take good steps forward in the program, lay the foundation. I know you've got a couple of them in your position group. Definitely want to be able to just highlight some of the things that, they've meant to the program.
Yeah, no, I know specifically in the receiver room, we're leaving Isaiah Rhodes. Again, he was a guy who was here when we got here, and, had an awesome turnaround. He was a guy who still figuring things out, being a young college player, college student, and then like I said, getting here, working with these guys, putting them through processes and giving them tips and ways to kind of help better themselves on the field and off the field. We've seen a lot of success from academics to even playing wise for Zay. And then with Adam Dunson, Duffy's what they call him. He transferred in after our first year being here, and he was a guy who just wanted the opportunity. And, coming from Indiana Wesleyan, not too far, he came here and kind of fit right in like a glove. Took a liking to a lot of our upperclassmen. Jackson was a really good friend of his, Dietrich. Duffy came in and kind of plug and play. So he was excited to see him make some plays. And then Dietrich, our top dog, our tight end, the muscle of the group. Really excited to see what he kind of sprung into. He had some rough patches over the years, dealing with injuries and sickness and those things. But just for him to show up every day, giving us everything he got, my favorite memory is just that AC joint. He busted up his AC joint. 2 days later, he was out at practice, hobbling, catching balls with one arm, and then 2 days later he's diving for catches, and it's just like, man, like nobody's tougher than Dietrich. So definitely going to miss those guys. And then you're going to kind of talk about some of the offensive linemen.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, you mentioned Jackson Elder. You know, he's been a staple on our offensive line for 4 years now. Came in and started as a freshman and as a sophomore. Was all conference both of those years. You know, going into his junior year, was excited for a great year. Unfortunately, had a setback with some injuries. You know, but fought back hard. Came back from the surgery, rehab. Was able to be just the consistent force up front and played, I believe, every snap this year, which was phenomenal. And so to be able to do that coming off of a year of a big injury, like you said with Dietrich, takes a lot of toughness, and both of those dudes, very tough dudes. When we talk about things, kind of what we value, we talked about this year a lot about just like the mentality of pounding the rock, of continuing to go to work, because you don't know when we're going to actually see the fruit of what we're doing, when we're going to see the results. And I think that those guys definitely personified kind of that mentality where you talk about Zay, who it took all the way until this year for him to be able to get the play time that he wanted, and was a starter all season at receiver, and made some really big catches in some big moments throughout the course of the year for us. And it was he continued to come to work, to practices, to workouts, worked really hard to get there. He wasn't seeing the results he wanted early on, but at that point of this year, he got that opportunity and showed what he could do in some really good ways for us. I think other guys were able to personify that as well. And then the seniors for us over on the defensive side of the ball, the two inside linebackers that have been starting darn near every game for us for a long time, Jake Simpson, Gavin Renners, those two guys have been just the force of our defense for a long time now. And we'll miss them for a lot of reasons. They definitely set great examples for their teammates. They were some just really hard workers, and came to work every single day through the off season, through the season as well, and really helped to build the foundation of our program. Zaire Prelo in the back end played some corner, played some safety, played on special teams. He came obviously with us from Concordia, and just was just a calm presence in the back end, and for him to get to end his senior season off, being able to have 3 interceptions in the Bronze Ball game, winning HCAC Defensive Player of the Week that week, being named to the D3 Team of the Week across the nation. Really cool for him to get to end on that. And then DeMarco Cooley up front as well too, and similar to some of those other guys that we talked about, just dealt with a lot through his career here. Transferred to us, played here for 3 years, had a couple seasons where there were just a lot of injuries that happened. Kept fighting, was able to, play in every game this year and make some really big impacts for us, on the defensive line. And, not all those showed up on the stat sheet, but the plays that he made up front allowed for other guys to be able to make the tackles that they did. He always brought a ton of energy with him as well, too, whether it's, screaming, making a bunch of noise in the weight room, whether it is, on the practice field, on the game field, guys definitely, got energized by him, in the plays that he made and the intensity that he brought. And so, it's a great group of seniors to get to be able to, honor and celebrate. We're thankful for what they did for us as a program and the investment that they have. We're excited to, be able to see how, again, we get to take the next step, kind of in our program next year.
Yep, and we kind of touched a little bit on some of the things that we kind of push to our guys, little messages or, mottos. We talked about pounding the rock. That's part of the reason why we got the sledgehammer up here. We have a sledgehammer for pound the rock for the guy. That's one of our awards that we give on the offensive side to a guy who's, consistently showing up. Again, pounding the rock until we eventually strike gold or strike that diamond that we're looking to see. Then along with that, on the offensive side, we got a hard hat. This is kind of replicating our helmet, but, this goes to the guy who just embodies the Raven way, embodies everything that we preach to our team about, from the top down, bringing people along as we're trying to be positive, do the right thing, have that championship level standard, push the championship level standard. And, this is something that these guys kind of push for, work for. Like the person who wins the hard hat, they get to keep it each week. And the guy who wins the hammer, he gets to take the hammer around class, to workouts, to the game, to practice, bring it back to campus, obviously. So, big responsibility, and it's a big privilege, and honor, to kind of compete and earn these things. And it gives you something to kind of hang your hat on. Again, everything doesn't always have to show up on the stat sheet to get recognized or to get honored or to get praised for. So, overall, we're glad with a lot of things that our guys did this season and a lot of work that they put in to get us one step closer in the direction that we're looking to go.
Yeah, absolutely, and that really goes along with what we talk about really on a daily, weekly, basis. Is it's a lot more about the process of doing these things, of what it takes to get the outcomes we want. Obviously, we all want those outcomes. We celebrate those outcomes when they happen, but it's really about what are we doing day to day to be able to get there, and to see the guys get to celebrate one another. When certain guys would win those awards or just be recognized for the hard work that they're putting in, that they're coming to work every single day, and whether we see the results all right now, we're seeing them little by little down the road. Obviously we wanted to be able to celebrate, those things. And, other things that we, celebrated in our program, it was cool this year. And, we had game balls, kind of for different guys, whether it was, for us, whether it's a young guy or an old guy, but, the first career touchdown that they have, in college, the first career takeaway that they have in college, those are just, honestly special moments that you never really forget. And we had seniors this year get their first career touchdown. We had freshmen get their first career touchdown. Same on the defensive side of the ball with the takeaways as well too. Some special teams takeaways also. And so to be able to celebrate those guys in those moments, and to know that again it wasn't just that hey they showed up in one moment. It was a lot of hard work goes into them being able to make that first career touchdown, that first career interception or forced fumble or whatever it might be. To be able to just get to celebrate that, because those moments are huge, and hopefully they just continue to come back to putting in that work to get those moments. But those were some fun things to celebrate. Defensively, the big hat for the big hit of the week. Just being able to just continue to push, the physicality that we want to have. We talk about being the toughest, hardest working, most competitive, team. Being able to, kind of celebrate those moments of toughness and hard work, where we are, bringing it to other opponents and imposing, the will, and just being able to dominate them. Said by even this past weekend, we were at a camp, one of the coaches that we played in a non-conference game just mentioned, man, how physical that game was. And, we just have some guys that really come to play and play really hard, celebrating those guys with the big moments, the big hits, the impact player as well too, on defense, that they do a sledgehammer, as well, just to be able to kind of celebrate those guys, really in every phase, offense, defense, special teams, that come to work, that embody what we're trying to do. And, in both wins and losses, being able to, again, celebrate the things that are going right, that we're doing well, that we can build off of for next week, while also correcting the mistakes, because man, there's a lot of ways that we need to continue to get better as a football team.
Yep, 100%. And it gives, again, not only just guys who's competing, to make the play or that's in the moment, it gives you something to look forward to. Look forward to making a play when you actually get in the game, or get your chance, or that ball's thrown your way, or the ball carrier's running your way. It's like, I get to make a tackle, I get to get the interception. Hopefully this hit is nominated for big hit. I know you're not thinking that in the moment, but going back, after making that play, after the drive ends, it's like, you come back, get an interception, get the turnover pass put on you. It's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see that on film. All right, I know I'm winning right now in the secondary for a chance to get the turnover pass. Or throw the ball in the end zone. In the touchdown. In the crowd after I get an interception or something. Like, that's so cool. And then you see people who's not in the game but are paying attention, and they're racing over to go get the big hat, or they're racing over to go get the sledgehammer for the guy who just laid the boom, or get the turnover pads. But it just finds ways to give you something to push for. And then at the end, you kind of get to hold on to it. And then, again, makes that memory, that moment, that much more better.
Yeah, most definitely. And something to, celebrate, as well, too, because, like, this is a fun game. We're putting so much time and effort and energy into this, and there's so much emotion that goes into football. Like, we got to celebrate when these good things, happen. I think that, if we could wrap that up in an image, I think it was actually how we ended the game, that final game where we get to end that game in victory formation. We're kneeling it, and you can see in the film, in the live stream, dancing on the sidelines, guys just celebrating with each other, having a great time while we're, doing the right thing and executing and winning a football game. It's great to be able to see the celebration, in that, because, these guys invest a lot together, and, as they continue to grow in relationship with each other, in addition to grow as football players, it's just, it's awesome to be able to do that with guys that you love.
Amen.
Well, we had, obviously we mentioned the seniors, a lot of other guys, making some big impacts, making a name for themselves across the conference, really as well, too, as the All-Conference Awards came out this week. 9 guys on our team that, got recognized by the conference, and that's really being recognized by other teams' coaches, by voting for them as one of the top players at their position in the conference. We had, on the defensive side of the ball, first team All-Conference, defensive lineman as a freshman, Jalen Hayes, was a game wrecker in a lot of ways. And it was crazy to see, too, just, for a young guy stepping in, making an impact right away, and other teams, taking note. And, for him to have to fight through, double teams, slides going his way, chips. I mean, it didn't take very long for other teams to be able to say, hey, we got a game plan against this guy. What is it kind of, what comes to your mind as you get to watch him play football?
My biggest thing was, in high school, he was a linebacker.
Yeah.
Like, he was a linebacker, and, being told through the recruiting process, with it being a transparent recruiting process, hey, looking to move you down at the edge, at the end, and, let you go chase after the quarterback. And, he has a wrestling background. He wrestled, I believe, 20 pounds heavier in high school than he was supposed to. So, it wasn't nothing new for him, and being from Louisville, I'm pretty sure he's used to, getting out of some situations, and having a lot of fun, getting after to cause havoc in the backfield, but he showed up every day, every week, ready to go to work, knowing it was going to be a challenge each week, fighting against, missed calls and missed moments by the refs. But, he's just a beast, man. Honestly, like, he's just a freaking tank. And I'm excited to watch him go through spring ball, and as he develops, not just physically, but technique-wise, too. Learning more technique, being a edge rusher, and what it takes to be elite at that. I know that he's going to put in the work, and it's just going to get scarier. So let's see how many times can he be, first team all conference.
Yep, without a doubt. Yeah, I think when I watch him play, he personifies the effort that you need to play with, and just the intensity. Whether it's plays where he's just running down screens, or obviously rushing the passer, being able to just fight through those double teams and not ever stop and not ever give up. Really displayed who he is, as a football player. That's a high level, I believe, of like football character. If you're gonna be able to have that type of effort from whistle to whistle, play after play after play, doing things the right way, that definitely was good. And so on the defensive line, joining him as an all-conference selection, senior DeMarco Cooley. We mentioned obviously a lot about him, and just him overcoming some of the adversity through the first couple years in the program, getting able to put together a 10-game season this year. And, again, though the statistics, weren't as high maybe as some other guys, the impact was still there.
Oh, heck yeah. And again, talked about some of the things that he had to overcome. Concussions was one. He made a big decision, joining us this season on, should I risk it? Should I risk the biscuit? Should I play? And, again, being transparent through the process of, getting him to come back for this last year, we talked about, easing him in, using him when we need him. And it turns out that, he played a lot more than what they talked about, and, had a bigger impact than what he probably envisioned having, so I'm excited. I'm excited to see him finish this thing out, and again, finishing out with all conference honors, along with his best friend. Last year, Connor Huffman, it gives them a lot to kind of talk about and just add to their memory bank.
Yep.
So I'm excited for Cooley, proud of Cooley.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think seeing how many of the young defensive linemen especially, just noted how much of an impact, he was on them, whether it's in just setting the example of, how to work hard, how to develop your body in the, weight room, to go out on the field, the effort and intensity, to play with. He was a great example for those guys, and it was cool to see those guys, voice that, as well, too, at the end of the year.
Yep.
So at the second level, two guys that are, no strangers to the all-conference, list. Jake Simpson, Gavin Renners, both repeating for the third time as all-conference linebackers. Here, we talked to, again about them already and the impact that they've made, on this program, as a whole. Just bringing a lot of ball carriers to the ground, getting after the quarterback a lot. Jake being, second in the entire conference in tackles with 90 tackles on the season. Gavin, adding a bunch of tackles to that as well, too, getting after the the quarterback, with 4.5 sacks as well. Seeing both of them make great strides as well, just in their athleticism year over year, making more plays in the pass game as well too, and in their coverage. Both just very well-rounded football players. Also both, getting to come over on the offensive side, play a little fullback. Also was, cool to get to utilize them for some of those goal line packages.
Yeah, no, I believe they call themselves the Smash Bros, and that's exactly what they did. They did a lot of smashing, and it's always fun getting those guys over on the offensive side, playing some fullback and getting after some linebackers. Nothing wrong with linebacker on linebacker action. So, but overall, I think those guys just did a good job of just embodying the Raven way overall, from just how they practiced and played, but how they prepared and took care of their bodies. It says a lot about why they have the stats in the season that they had. So really excited to see guys kind of step up and take advantage of the opportunities that's there at that linebacker position.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely set a great example for those young guys. They're going to have to come in behind them, and those guys are going to have some big shoes to fill. Yeah, excited for that. Well, then at the, kind of at the back end, we've got, another pair of all-conference, guys between Zaire, and Travis Billups, freshman as well, too. So guy in his last season, guy in his first season. Zaire, like we had talked about, just has been a great presence in the secondary. Really, switched over to play mostly safety this year after playing pretty much all corner the year prior. For people that maybe aren't a part of it and don't really know the process, that may seem like not a big deal. Anytime you switch positions, though, especially in college football, it's a big deal, and that's tough. And you're going from seeing things different to reading things different to having different rules, different things that you've got to do. The effort that he put in was awesome. His the way that he would calmly lead in that secondary filled with a lot of younger players, I think was really good. To have him culminate with the interceptions he had, especially on the back half of the season, was just awesome to be able to see.
Yeah, no, Zaire's a guy who's always down in our offices, always down in Coach Montgomery's office, voicing what he's seeing, what he's hearing, and finding ways to keep everybody going in the right direction. Even if we have a rough week, he's still finding the ways to kind of keep guys engaged and still trying to find ways to get guys better. Again, him being a guy who had a previous stop, I'm pretty sure he's glad with the way things ended for him. With all conference honors, with Player of the Week honors, Division III, making that team. It says a lot about your work ethic and just what you had to overcome. So I'm excited for what Unc has in store next.
Yep, without a doubt. In 2 years in the program, to be a two-time captain, a two-time all-conference player, to end with a lot of, kind of opportunities to, take that football away and, really leave his mark here. In addition to having a 4.0 GPA, right. Definitely a great, great career for him. And then Travis, he from day one that he stepped on campus, he was an impact guy as well too, making plays throughout fall camp. Just the athleticism that he has, the natural ability he has, and his competitive edge as well too. I thought was really good. Anytime there's a freshman corner out there, a lot of offenses want to test him, and he came down with a lot of plays. 3 interceptions on the year. Some just really incredible plays there. 45 tackles, got involved in the run game, or being able to make tackles on the perimeter was good. Obviously there were some ups and downs like there are for all young players, but at that position, especially at corner, it's so hard because you make one mistake and the entire stadium knows. A defensive lineman makes a mistake, you may not always know, but like when those guys are out on islands, it takes a level of mental toughness to be able to come back after having your mistakes on display, to then come back and then make a positive play. That takes a lot of mental toughness, especially from a young guy. I know from that, that's one of the things I'm really proud about him for.
Yeah, no, keeping his composure, being in those situations, understanding that, just because you give up one, you got another opportunity because they're going to come back. And then on top of you being young, you always got to be ready, and that just constantly goes into what we preach, just that next play mentality. I tell my guys on offense, good play, bad play, next play, and being a DB, you have to have that mindset. Can't get stuck on the previous play. And outside of his impact on defense, him flying down as a gunner on punt, you know, being on kickoff, you know, those are opportunities to kind of get some extra stats and just being ready when your number's called, being available, and that's what we preach to our guys about, you know, finding a way to get on the field, impacting the team, and being able to play football.
Yeah. I know one of my favorite plays on the year, obviously there were a lot of great plays, one of my favorite ones, you know, him flying down on kickoff, having that perfect punch out for the forced fumble, Braden Clemens being able to scoop it up, and, you know, for him getting to be nominated as the D3 Special Teams Player of the Week, you know, that week was really cool, you know, as well, too. But, you know, that was a great play just because, you know, the backstory really going into it was much better about how, you know, we'd been emphasizing, you know, being able to punch that football out. You had gotten on him a little bit that week as well, too, to bring the intensity up in that way. And, boy, he responded in a good way. I think a lot of guys would have responded with, you know, maybe some defensiveness. That's not how we do things. You know, being able to respond in a positive way to say, yeah, you're right. Let me go, you know, raise that intensity on being able to punch that football out, doing it with perfect technique, and us being able to have a great special teams play because of it was definitely a highlight for me, you know, during the season, you know, kind of for those guys. So
I love when the defense get the ball back for offense.
Oh, yeah.
Or even on special teams, man.
Yep.
Get that ball back to Coach Johnson.
Yes. Anytime we could have a, you know, the drive starts on the 5-yard line, life is good. Makes it a lot easier to score. So flipping over to the offensive side of the ball, you know, a group of guys that also received all conference awards. Jackson Elder on the offensive line. We talked about just how, you know, consistent he's been throughout the season, playing every snap, you know, and coming off of, you know, the injury and just knowing, man, at offensive line, your body is hurting and you are sore and you are tired and, you know, you could be feeling miserable at times, but to be able to say, no, I'm going to keep going and I'm not stopping. I'm not coming off the field. And, you know, he's got that edge to him as well, too, where it's, man, he's always wanting to put dudes in the dirt. You know, he wanted to be able to really show what he could do, you know, on the field and pave the way, both, you know, moving from guard to tackle this year because that was what was needed, you know, for us, you know, for him to be able to mainly play that spot. Also still played a little bit of guard, you know, as we kind of rotated some guys, but, you know, really just was a guy that was a big impact player up front for us.
Yeah, no, and I think it definitely showed, too, you know, just the level of trust we have to, you know, make that transition and put him back at his primary position. You know, even when we went some of our heavy packages, you know, put him at a tight end body, you know, and just let him just do what he do best, which is just maul people. You know, like he said, he loves to put bodies on the ground. He loves the combative situations, and he's going to let you know that he put you in the ground, you know, and that's something that you just can't teach. Just that nastiness, that ability to just finish guys when you have them holding on by their fingernails on the turf. So really glad that Jackson was on our team and got to play with him and not against him.
Yep.
And excited for what he has next in store.
Yeah, I think he definitely is a guy that everybody wants to have on your team and not have, you know, on the opposite team there. So, you know, another all-conference nomination, second time, you know, for this guy, Dietrich Johnson at the tight end position. You know, this year battled through a little bit of that injury. Boy, it did not hold him out for long, though, at that point in time. And, you know, he came back, you know, quickly. Just a guy that's tough as nails, that is going to work incredibly hard, that has a really fiery personality, wants to be able to do things at a really high level, did stuff for us in the run game, in the pass game. We moved him around, motioned him probably more than anybody, played at the outside receiver spot, inside receiver spot, in the backfield, at a wing tight end, on the line of scrimmage, put him in just in so many spots because, well, he could handle it. And, you know, he's been a guy that's been a focal point of our offense for 3 years now and, you know, really appreciate all the work that he's put in.
Yeah, no, and I think the way that the game is going now, I think the more versatility you have at that tight end position makes game planning for us a lot more complicated, you know, because when you can shift personnels with just substituting one guy or without shifting personnel, it's tough to scheme for, you know. So, you know, for a guy like him, like I said, who freaking ate nails and crapped under, you know, it was tough, you know, and he was a guy who would do whatever it takes each day at practice. You know, hey, we're a little flat today, coach. Don't mind my stupidity here. But he's going to find a way to ramp up the intensity at practice and get everybody going just so we could get the outcomes we need on Saturday. And, you know, yeah, you know, there are certain ways to go about it, but just got to respect, you know, that you're paying attention and you're aware of, you know, hey, we're a little flat. You know, what can I do knowing that I can make an impact here in practice? Let me, you know, cause some friction and press some buttons and get things going. So definitely going to miss his presence, you know, and then, like I said, everything that it took to fight through injuries. Again, you can't teach that. Those are things that player uses their discretion on, and I just respect him and appreciate him giving us everything he got, while being in a lot of pain.
Yep, absolutely. I think probably one of my favorite moments of, the plays that he made this year would have been in our game against Mount St. Joe. And that was a game offensively where we had a lot of production. It was really springboarded by a play that he made. It was, I think it was 4th and 19. And we were like on that brink of the red zone where it's like, okay, it was too short to punt. It was too long to be able to kick a field goal. And so it's like, we got to go for it. How many plays you got on 4th and 19? Apparently, it's just throw it up to Dietrich, and Carson dropped back, made a really good throw to him, put it up over top of a defender. Dietrich came down with it, and it was one of those where it's like, wow, how did he do that? Yeah. And that led to the first score, which then led to the next score, and then it really led to a lot of production on offense that day. And unfortunately, that game got away from us a little bit. But I think that game though did give our team some confidence, especially after we had a couple games prior where just the offense wasn't clicking very much. That got some opportunities in there for us to get down the field and score, and to show up big on a 4th and 19, to be able to, when it's man coverage and it's that big 4th down play, for the quarterback to look your way, I think shows a lot of trust in that one-on-one matchup as well too. As I think that was one of my favorite moments of him.
Yeah, so. Mine too. And just, like you said, just see the tight end go up and make that catch, like fingertip grab, held it, contained it all the way down to the ground while having contact from the ground. That's what we talk about in our room, is making the tough catches, and that's going to get you those opportunities every time.
Yep. And then, rounding out the all-conference selections for us this year, running back Albert Rabb was a sophomore for us, really took on a lot of the load. Got a couple carries as a freshman, grew a lot in the offseason, definitely transformed his body to be able to, last. Had a couple of injuries that he had to work through, this year, but, led our team in touchdowns, obviously led our team in rushes, and there were multiple games where, we kind of just said, hey, you're getting the ball 20 times, and, this is going to be some tough yardage, but we need you to be able to pick it up. I think he did a good job running the football for us this year.
Heck yeah, you talk about every down back. He may not look like it, but he definitely plays like it. You see his build, his stature. Yes, like a bowling ball, you're gonna bounce off of him for sure. But I think even in the pass game, he brings another dynamic with with decent routes. He might not want to hear that, but decent routes. But his hands, his catch radius is nice. So for a guy, for a running back in our offense, that's kind of like the ideal type of back, that we can use in the run game and the pass game. But I think it's every back's dream to be told, hey, you're going to get the ball 20 times today. I need you to be able to handle it. Yep. And it's like, I got you, coach. And whatever we needed Rab to do, he would do. Even if it's, like I said, going out on the perimeter, during practice, getting extra reps, he's going to do it. He's a football player, so excited for what Rab got in store next.
Absolutely. A dude that loves contact, without a doubt. Just watching him just run over dudes. I remember, one in the Alfred State game, one in the Wilmington game, where he just put some safeties, in the dirt, and to be able to do that. I also, you mentioned the route running and, having some good catches for us. Also in the pass protection game, did a really good job. I remember one of the big explosive plays that we had in the pass game against Mount St. Joe would not have had if he didn't, after a play action fake, peel back and just rock that blitzing linebacker, and to be able to keep the quarterback safe and upright to be able to make that throw. There were some he was definitely an all around back where he did a lot of things really well, and I think other coaches saw that kind of throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
So
and being able to do that as a sophomore, the sky's the limit. So excited for the upcoming years with him. Yeah,
absolutely. As we end out the year, obviously fun to celebrate those great moments. And there were a lot of other great moments too that maybe didn't get recognized to the same level in the week or with an award. But I appreciate our guys' effort week in and week out throughout the course of a long college football season. And for us, having a just to be honest, younger team, right, with only 8 seniors, we're building this program to where in a year year or two, we're going to have 25, 30 seniors every single year. And just as we continue to lay the foundation for this program, we've got a lot of young guys with a lot of energy, with a lot of hunger and desire, to be able to grow. I'm excited to see where this goes over the course of the next several years.
Heck yeah, same. And like you said, a lot of young guys getting a lot of experience too. And that's going to mean, when those guys are juniors and seniors, we got these freshmen coming in. Those freshmen are going to have upperclassmen with experience, and they're going to have upperclassmen here to show them how to do things. We got here, we didn't have that many seniors to show the incoming freshman class how to do the Raven way. Partially, we got here in the spring, but they haven't been through it themselves. And it's always good when you can have somebody with experience or someone you can lean on as you're going through things when things get hard to kind of help talk you off the ledge and let you know that, hey, the storm will pass. This is just temporary. Stick with it. Keep showing up, and then great times will come.
Yeah.
So really excited for going into the spring with these group of guys.
Absolutely. Well, so next week we have our year-end banquet where we get to kind of have that last time together at the 2025 Ravens and celebrate again the work that these guys put in to get to send the seniors off, one last time, just to get to, enjoy some fellowship, with the team, with our families, and all that type of stuff. And so, we'll be back next week here on the podcast, kind of with some wrap up from the banquet, having some of the guys that win some of the awards, joining us as well too. And so, excited, and please stay with us and come back next week, to get celebrate a little bit more of this 2025 season with us.
Team on 2, 1-2.
Team.